Thank you. And Carlo, thank you for setting this terrific example. I will try my very best to stick to 5 minutes. I will also say that I have to start this with a huge disclaimer, which is that I very much believe in the old paradigm having to shift. One of my missions, in fact, of being here is to convince Carlo to duplicate what he did for Europe, for the US, a new growth path model for the US. So absolutely, I'm a believer, let's put it that way. What I would like to convince you, though, is that even the boring old paradigm stuff can get us a long way toward where we need to go. And essentially, the punchline is, in the end, it's politics that prevents us from getting there. It's not necessarily the lack of thinking. Yes, of course, there's a lot to be done. There are, in fact, books to be written about this topic. But at the end of the day, it is, in fact, the old boring stuff that can get us a long way toward where we need to go. Here's one figure, 1.5%. Some of you might know Dale Jorgensen. He's sort of the, one of the deans of macroeconomic modeling, essentially, sitting around waiting for the Nobel Prize in a sense, right? He's in fact not sitting around. He's using his models to, in this case, model the effect of the Clean Air Act in the US. The Clean Air Act of 1970, which, by the way, also gives you an indication of how far we have come. So if you had asked me 2 years ago what my day job was, it was trying to pass comprehensive climate legislation in the US. Right now, our goal is to defend the Clean Air Act of 1970. But still, you use one of these old, boring, neoclassical, standard economic growth models. You, quote unquote, shock it with the Clean Air Act. And GDP in 2010, because of the Clean Air Act, goes up by 1.5%. This is the mismeasured gross domestic product in a completely misspecified macroeconomic growth model. And still, essentially what we are seeing is not poisoning our children in the 70s makes for more productive workers later on. Right, so this is about the moral equivalent of arguing against child labor by saying keeping kids in school makes for more productive adults. Right? It is the most narrow-minded, I don't even want to say economics 101 reasoning, but very much narrow-minded, and even that works. Here's another number from this work of defending the Clean Air Act. Every dollar invested, every dollar of costs, generates $30 worth of benefits. Again, very standard Econ 101 benefit cost calculation, lots of things missing, no ethics, little of any original thought added to this, and still, Clean Air Act of 1970, $30 of benefits for every dollar of investment. Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 in the US, about $40 worth of benefits for every dollar invested. This is not even close. Yes, new economic thinking might get us even further, but arguing about the efficacy of the Clean Air Act, for example, is on the facts, not a debate to be had. Econ 101 tells us which way we ought to go. Here's a more recent and more concrete example. Deciding whether you should buy the standard version of this vehicle or the more fuel-efficient hybrid version. Right? One answer, and one answer we might sort of subscribe to new thinking, is to say neither. Right? I don't have a driver's license. I live in New York, so I guess I don't need one, but still, right? That's one answer, to say we need to fundamentally restructure the way we think about transport systems and not make it necessary for people to drive in the first place. Fine. But many of us right now are in fact faced with this decision. Right? And here is the standard economic version of your decision when you walk into the car dealership. And it is extremely easy to make fun of this, right? No one stands in the car dealership and solves second-order conditions. Now, of course, economists don't actually think this is how you behave. Economists think this is, they model your behavior as if you behave this way, but even that, we heard over the last 2 days, is something not just to be made fun of, but something to criticize. Right. Let's apply this theory to the most comprehensive data set of car purchasing decisions, 1.5 million car purchasing decisions in the US households, right, the most selfish consumers on the planet making decisions along these lines. It turns out the average American is willing to spend 72 cents right now for a more fuel-efficient car for every $1 in fuel savings later. Right? You can look at this number now and say two things, right? Right? Humans aren't completely rational. You're supposed to spend 100 cents today for 100 cents in savings later. All in present value, yes, absolutely. So this is, in fact, sorry, this is not McKinsey. This is Hunt Alcott, Steve Rosny. So they have done their job on this, right? It's all in present value terms, discounted, all.
Not using hyperbolic.
Not using hyperbolic. In this case, what they've in fact done is gone through that as well. But this is standard discounting model, no hyperbolic discounting. Econ 101, literally 101, not 102 even. Right? So 100 cents today for every 100 cents in fuel savings later. Now, right, one version is to say, people aren't rational. The other version is to say, well, if you want to have people buy more fuel-efficient cars, or not drive at all for that matter, here's your answer right here. You can get 2/3 along the way to where you need to be by raising the price of gasoline, right? Now, turns out in the US, we have an 18.4 cent federal gasoline tax. Right? Why is it 18.4 cents? Not because someone did the benefit cost calculation, and then we handed that to Congress, and Congress decided, thank you, absolutely 18.4 cents it is. It's 18.4 cents because in 1993, we did not have 60 votes for 18.5 cents. That is the only answer, right? It is not economics. That does tell us it ought to be at $2 or higher per gallon of gasoline. It is politics. It's getting 60 senators out of 100 in the US Senate to agree to raise the price of gas. So yes, do we need new economic thinking for the sake of, this is my 1-year-old when he was a little bit younger, for the sake of all of us? Absolutely. But even the old boring economics, and I can promise you there isn't a lot of boring economics in this book, it's all new thinking in there, but even the old boring stuff gets us a long way to where we need to go. If the new framework, the new paradigm shifts to politics, sign me up. But unless that's what we are moving toward, unless we get to 60 votes in the US Senate or 51% pretty much anywhere else on this planet, then we may be focusing on the wrong thing here. It has to be shifting the politics as opposed to looking at the theory for theory's sake. Thank you.